analyst Shan Wu with us, defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. Shan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Christy.
Good. So I want to, just for our viewers, really dig into this constitutional grounds for presidential impeachment and what that means. Here's the summary. It says the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. I want to break this down for you. First of all, treason and bribery. That's based obviously on what we've seen in these hearings, what we know about these witness testimonies, the White House transcript perhaps, President Trump's own words based on that Ukraine call. Is there anything that you have seen that would constitute or the evidence that would prove treason and bribery here?
Probably not treason. I know many people feel, using sort of common sense, that the president has engaged in treasonous-like acts, maybe being too aligned with Russia. But treason is defined very narrowly in U.S. law. I mean, it really has to be aiding an enemy, someone we're at war with and such. So treason is probably out of the picture. Bribery, a little closer call. There's this notion that the Ukrainian aid would be like dangling money to the Ukrainians, was a lot of money to the Ukrainians. I think, though, it's a little bit of a tough uphill battle because while it has a lot of common sense appeal, again, the Republicans will likely argue that bribery normally is offered to an individual with a bad intent. Here's some money, do something illegal for me. Here they can argue that this is more like lobbying. The money was meant for a good purpose, and they're offering it to a government, not an individual. So it's possible to argue bribery, but still a little bit out of the normal context for bribery.
Okay, so then we come to high crimes and misdemeanors, and the precise meaning of that phrase, apparently, I mean, that's not defined in the Constitution itself. So with that said, if it's not formally defined, what are the parameters by which they can try to establish this?
Right. The high crimes one is the sort of catch-all phrase, and if you look back historically at what the framers were defining for that, a very important point is they specifically did not want to include as a high crime or misdemeanor the idea of what they called maladministration, malfeasance, basically doing a bad job. And the reason they didn't want that as an impeachable offense is they felt that that would be too easily used for political or partisan gain, just that we don't like the job you're doing, so therefore we're going to impeach you. So what the Democrats have to do to avoid that is they have to make it clear that this wasn't just we disagree with the job President Trump's doing, but that there is actual misconduct here. And that's what they need to focus on, things that are clearly wrong, that are like bribery or an abuse of power, not giving aid that was already meant to be given aid for his own political gains. So they really need to concentrate on the misconduct aspect rather than just, we think you're a terrible president.
Okay. And we know Democrats are also considering obstruction of justice connected to the Mueller probe. Any evidence of that, in your opinion?
There's a lot of evidence of that, Christy. There are those 10 instances that were set out in the probe, so I think that is a pretty strong legal argument for it. The question will be whether, from a strategy point of view, if the Democrats are worried that that's too many issues going on and maybe they want to avoid the Mueller probe. But there's very good evidence of that, and also, of course, there's very strong evidence of obstruction of Congress instructing all of these officials absolutely not even to show up with regard to their subpoenas.
Shan, I only have a couple of seconds left, but I did want to ask you one more thing about the fact that the president has two deadlines now, one tomorrow, one next Friday, to make the determination as to whether he and his lawyers will participate in these hearings. Do you think they should?
It would be a big mistake not to participate. We have a common misconception that impeachment is not a legal proceeding, that it's purely political. It's really not. It's one of our most basic legal proceedings. And if I were advising the president, I would tell him you really need to have lawyers in there to help figure out what kind of questions you want to ask. It's not just cross-examination. It's eliciting helpful testimony that you can use later in the trial. So that's important for us all to remember, that impeachment is a legal proceeding, one of the most basic ones enshrined in the Constitution. It's just a legal proceeding that doesn't take place in the courtroom. Like many others, administrative hearings, for example, regulatory hearings, this is a legal proceeding that takes place in a political venue, which is Congress.
Okay. Shan Wu, always appreciate your expertise, sir. Thank you for being here.
Good to see you, Christy.
You too.